I'm just going to go over some of the basics of ISSS, working with us, some key immigration topics to consider. So one second, I'm just going to advance the slide here. All right. So who is ISSS? So basically there's about 20, closer, maybe even soon to be 21 Penn staff members. Our goal is to advance global engagement at Penn. We want to make sure that we are offering two areas to you, immigration and integration. We want to make sure it's inclusive and we're impactful to help you during your stay in both these areas. So these are two pillars that really hold up our office and are very important to being well-rounded to help our students at Penn. So who do we serve? Mainly, so we serve a whole variety of international clientele at Penn in the community. So all of our international students, our J1 students, F1 students, and then also the scholars, faculty, employees that are in those different immigration statuses listed, as well as your dependents, if there's dependents who have questions. And we work with all 12 academic schools. We work with students and employees, again, and scholars from all schools, as well as the affiliated hospitals. We do employment-based processing for all of the Penn hospitals, as well as advising all the students. So those individuals in that last slide handle a very large load in regards to working with the international community, but we are there for everyone. All right, so a little bit more about what we do. On the immigration side, we're there to help you, to advise, to support you in any questions that you may have, as well as when you have certain processes that need to be done in regards to maybe it's a travel signature, extending your I-20, anything in regards to working, employment, recommendations or authorizations, depending on what it is. We are going to help you with that. And I'll go into a little bit more how you can contact us to get questions answered and anything that may come up during your stay and beyond. So if you're here in a status where you're able to work after graduation, or depending on how long you're here, you're going to continue to be with us through that process. And we have so many integration programs as well. And you probably learn more about those from Yuhang if you haven't already. The different orientation, what we're doing today, the different integration supports. We have different celebrations that go on throughout the year, our leadership opportunities, our student groups that are part of our ISTAB, ISTAR. We have departments that are very vested in the international students community that take part in IPOG and our BSIG programs, and then the different webinars. So exactly what we're doing today, anything we can to support and help you acclimate to being a student in the US, in Philadelphia, and at Penn. Okay, so a little bit more. So there's lots of e-forms in our IPEN system, which you should be familiar with, where you applied for your I-20 or your DS 2019. I'm not sure if we have any J1s with us today, but that would be the DS 2019 form. But anything in regards to, there's lots of e-forms that are offered, whether you need to travel, you're applying for work authorization. Those are always going to be signed by what's called a DSO, a designated school official. And those are anyone at ISSS and only at ISSS, except for English language program. But I believe everyone here is part of, is not in that program itself. But IPEN is a portal where there's going to have all different e-forms for you to complete. Maybe your dependent's not here and you need to request a document for them to come. Maybe your program's going to take longer and you need to request an extension. IPEN is going to be the place to go to make any type of request and work with ISSS on those. Okay, so one of the key things is that you do have an assigned advisor. They're going to be your main point person, your go-to. you have specific immigration related inquiries that is beyond just looking up, let's say, on the website, you are going to have an assigned advisor. And depending on your birth month, you'll see that these are the individuals that are going to be who you can contact. And so a lot of times it's by email. It may be looking to see when they have appointments, but they are there for you. So if you're a January birthday, you can see it's Jean, August is Sean. Currently, I'm November. And once our colleague is back, you'll then be with Juan. So you'll see that this is how this is sorted out. So how do you find their information? So if you go onto your iPen homepage, you can see their email. So if you see that on the left towards the bottom, you can see that if that's my email. So if you are my assigned advisee, that is where you can get that information. You can also, if you log onto your Path to Penn record, once you're like checked in and everything, you should be able to also see not just your academic advisor, but your ISS advisor there. But the key thing is once we register you right now, you may have one of the coordinators that helped you to get here if you're new. And then once we make you active, you're going to be able to then see that it becomes one of these individuals. So we have the group that helped you to get here and get your initial I-20, answered any of those initial questions. And then once you become an active student, it turns over to one of the advisors on staff. Okay, so we do mainly virtual advising. We may have some like special pop-up sessions where we go to your school. You may see us out and about. Our office is open, but our advising is mainly virtual right now. And we do advising by appointment, where you can log on to the advising website. You can see it as one of the tabs if you go onto our homepage, and we offer these 20-minute slots, and we release advising slots pretty much daily for the next week. And you'll see as they come up. They are popular, so if you don't see anything, it means they're all booked. So when I took this snapshot the other day, we still had a few openings on Friday. If I went to look now, it's very possible they could be booked by now. So, but they're always opening up, and there is an alternative, and we offer this each day, and we have walk-in advising. Since Monday was a holiday, you won't see Monday, but normally there would be a time slot. So again, when I took this screenshot, there was no Monday, but normally there will be a couple sessions on Monday as well. So when you go on, and you can see this at the bottom of the appointment page, is this option. And basically you're logging on. It's an hour that the advisors are taking students. As long as they do come to a capacity, we can probably take about 10 students in an hour. If not, it would end up being about 2 or 3 hours. But I find that, recently we're able to accommodate that. But just so you know, if you log on and you are in the waiting room, we're going to be able to see you. It's just, you might have a little wait sometimes, or maybe you might be seen right away. But we do that as much as possible to the highest capacity we can possibly, that we can manage in regards to that. But these are options, to make sure that you're able, if you have some like basic, some questions, especially for the walk-ins, that's more for like general quick questions. Something a little bit more detailed, you may want to go ahead and schedule an appointment. If your advisor is free, great, but you don't have to just see your advisor. If you have a fairly complicated situation, then it might be something to reach out directly and see how best to handle with your assigned ISSS advisor. Okay, so going into some of the more immigration-focused topics. So travel. So all of you here, I'm hoping. So you have a good idea of what you need when you're coming into the US. So the passport has to be valid whenever you're here, but when you're traveling in, there's many countries that it needs to be at least 6 months into the future. An entry visa. Now, anyone here from Canada or Bermuda does not require the sticker that goes in your passport. That's considered the entry visa. So if you're F1 or J1, that visa must be valid when you're coming in unless you're from one of the Canada or Bermuda. Now, when you're here in the US, it's okay if that visa expires. It just has to be valid the next time you leave and come back. Your travel signature, it's no older than 12 months when you come in, when you're during your program. You'll see it on page 2 of your F1 I-20 or page 1 of your DS 2019 if you're J1. So some of you, if you've just gotten here and you're still doing the new arrival check-in, you may not yet have that travel signature, but look out for an email. What'll happen is once we do your arrival form and you complete like the tutorial, you do the arrival. So make sure you do that if you haven't already. That's really is key priority if there's anyone who still needs to go ahead and do that. And then what we do is we email you the signed I-20. So you're going to want to print that email. Excuse me, not the email, but the I-20 or the DS 2019. And that you're going to print that and it's going to have that travel signature. So if you're traveling, let's say next summer, you know, you're a continuing student into the fall, for example, you're traveling over spring break, for example, you need to have that I-20 and you want to make sure you're printing it. So you have it when you're going through the Customs and Border Protection, they want to see the physical copy. So you want to make sure you have that ready. And when you go and you're like, oh, I don't have, it's not signed. Remember, when you check in, you'll get that email and it'll be attached. Okay. Now, this may not apply to everyone, especially if you're only here, perhaps for an exchange program for the semester, and especially if you're F1. But just for anyone who's continuing long term, some of the off-campus may apply. But just to kind of go on campus, though, probably applies to anyone while you're still in your program. So it's only for current students. The easiest way to know whether you're allowed to work in the US, and if it's on campus, is that you're here at Penn, you're working for Penn, Penn's paying you, and you're located at Penn. So if there's anything that varies from that, you definitely want to reach out to advisor. When school's in session, you can do 20 hours per week, and you don't have to have prior work authorization if you're F1 only. Now for J1, you can do up to 20 hours, but there is an additional form to be completed. So if you are a J1 student looking to work on campus, make sure to reach out. And it should be on our website as well, the form that needs to be completed before you start. Now for off campus, that's basically working, you know, anything that doesn't qualify for on campus. For off campus, there's 2 types of work authorization. For F1 students, curricular practical training, and I'll go into optional practical training. J1s have something called academic training. So for F1 CPT, that is something that after you completed 1 year, usually 1 academic year, invalid F1 status, and you have the option to do, you know, possibly part-time during the year or full-time during the summer, and J1, again, full-time in the summer, or part-time academic training during the academic year. Now, this is just going to be an overview of employment. That is something that we do have through the semester, specific workshops for OPT and CPT in particular. So, you know, we're just going to do a brief review here, but just to make sure to keep an eye out on the information that comes out on our future workshops, or you go through our website, go through the web pages, if you have specific questions. But a lot of you, since you're new, it may not be something you're thinking about right now. And this just goes a little bit more into the options. Our F1, the OPT, optional practical training. It is something that allows you to work off campus. A lot of people do it after graduation. It's 12 months. Those in STEM degrees might be able to do additional 24 months. And that's something granted by USCIS, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. Then we have the J1 academic training. That cannot exceed the duration of your academic program. So if you're only here, let's say, for a semester exchange, you can have this work authorization for up to the same amount of time. Like, for example, what's the equivalent of the semester, maybe 3 or 4 months. So that is something you're going to plan to do, and you would work with us to have that approved. Okay. So these are some of the key things. I just wanted to point out some of the key points to make sure you're maintaining your status while you're here, to make things easier. And a lot of things, again, I mentioned iPen, a lot of this is going to be through iPen as well. The first thing is always make sure you're reading our emails and you're doing whatever is needed. You're going to get emails from us. Some may be more, could be social in nature, but then we're also going to have very important immigration ones. You should be reading them all to make sure if there's anything that is key for you to pursue, that you do that. So when we send you that email with the I-20 attached that has this travel signature, you really want to make sure you take note of that one. I've probably had about 5 emails with people coming back from winter break don't realize they already have their I-20. They don't need to request a new one because they did not look at that email last fall. So make sure that you go ahead and do that. Also important is that you're maintaining full-time enrollment. This is a key part of your F1 and J1 status, is that you are keeping up that enrollment. And for undergrad as well as grad, most programs are going to be 3 CUs, like course units a semester, that you're going to need to be taking every semester unless you're eligible for what we call a reduced course load. And you always want to make sure you're doing that request in advance. Of dropping any questions, or if you're in the middle of semester and you realize you're struggling or there's any issue that you're dealing with, whether it's medical in nature, academic, depending on what it is, that you're reaching out for assistance before it gets too far. It's too, you want to make sure that you can talk with us, you can talk with health professionals, you can talk with your academic schools to know your options. But some of the ones that are possible are, for example, for academic, in particular, your first, maybe your second semester, there may be some academic reasons, such as you're not familiar with US classroom, language, American language, not American language, language issues. So there's things you may qualify for. There's medical reasons. And then if it's your final semester, so let's say it's a semester that you're graduating or completing your program, you only have to take what's left, but you still want to make sure you're doing that e-form. So there are these options. And again, it's going to be outlined on our website. We've got an e-form for that, that you'll be able to take care of that. Another thing is that you're making normal progress towards program completion. That's another thing that's required to maintain your status, so that you're taking the classes you need to, you're advancing, you're completing them. So you always want to make sure that you're doing what you need to do in order to complete your program in the expected amount of time. Again, if there's any delays, issues, make sure you're reaching out. We work closely with our academic counterparts, so we can always help you as a team to make sure that we're taking care of what needs to be done for you or addressing any of your concerns. Now, if anyone moves while they're here, you are required to report your update in an address within 10 days of any change. So if you make that update in Penn, it will come into our CVIS system and be reported through CVIS. So as long as you do it there, you're fulfilling that requirement. Now, a program extension. So you want to always make sure you look at your I-20 end date, or if we make any updates and we notify you, you're always knowing what your end date is on your document, your I-20 or your DS 2019, because if you need to extend that program, you need to make sure that you're doing that before you expire. So if there's an extension needed and you need more time, usually you have a valid academic reason, you need more time, or your original time, there wasn't enough time given to you to begin with. It was the wrong end date or something, wasn't, especially with doctoral students, if there's any doctoral students with us, it's an estimate, but it's not uncommon to need more than, let's say, 5 years. So make sure you're requesting that before you expire. And again, you're updating your graduation date with your school and you're submitting the extension e-form in iPen. And then that gets taken care of. So just make sure timely action on something like that in particular. possibly you determine that you need to take a leave of absence. You have a personal reason. There's something that, you need to take a semester off. Again, make sure you're talking to your advisor in advance about that, because there are certain steps and considerations, and we want to make sure we have a chance to discuss it with you. Now, another key thing is probably one of the most important things to making sure you maintain status and you don't put yourself in a really difficult situation is you must always have work authorization before you start any work position off campus. So never work without authorization. If one thing you take away, please remember that. And if you ever have an opportunity come up, even if it's like remote and it's just from your dorm room, but it's for a company off campus or out of the US, it's still employment. You still need to have authorization. So please make sure to talk to us. So this is the website. It's a great resource. It has everything I've discussed. So please make sure familiarize yourself with it. Go through the different sections, find out what the integration team is offering, see who's on the ISSS team in general, and hopefully it'll answer any questions. But again, you have the resources I mentioned before if anything else does come up. These are great ways to keep in touch with us through social media. Definitely recommend signing up for the Global Quaker newsletter. You're going to get updates when we have different workshops or activities or key things to note, just not within ISSS, but at Penn in general, that may be of interest to our international students. So thank you very much for joining today. Again, hopefully you get out, safely walk around campus, enjoy some snow, and then I guess we can take questions.
So Donna, there is a question just post it in chat box, and I will defer to you.
Okay. Let me see. Question is volunteering off campus considered as employment in the US? That is a good question, and it can be a tricky question because employment is not always determined by whether you're paid or not. So an employer may say, oh, that's okay, I'm not going to employ you, I'm not going to pay you, but really they should be. Or it's really later is determined that you should have been paid for something you were doing. So the best thing is, I wouldn't suggest pursuing anything that's off campus, one, without possibly discussing with your ISSS advisor, and two, not thinking if it's not paid that it's not employment. Really, it can't. US has labor laws, and if it violates any labor laws, not just the company would be in trouble itself, but if it's determined that it's work you should have been paid to do, then it becomes an issue for your immigration status. So I would say it's best to avoid it unless it's a clear bona fide volunteer opportunity. You're going to help with a meal share. You're going to be working with the homeless, the unhoused, and you're going to be handing out meals at a shelter, for example, working with the Red Cross. So if there's any question, reach out to your advisor. It's always best to be safe. Hi. Hi, so whoever's the individual, the J1s, the J1 research scholar, I would definitely say it's something you want to definitely reach out to our J1 specialists in regards to your questions. So that might be a good separate discussion. Unfortunately, there's really nothing that can be done to expedite administrative processing. But if you're not already working with someone in ISSS, we definitely want to connect you with someone in our J1 scholar area for that. So a question about the I-94. So the I-94 is actually your official entry record when you come into the US. So you are going to always make sure, if you haven't already looked, CBP has a website. I don't know if you, Hong or Mike, if you know the I-94 website, you can put into the chat. If not, I can look that up. But it's basically your official like legal entry, and it should show, if you're F1 student, it should say F1. If you're J1, it should say J1, and then it should say D/S. So every time you're entering the US, you want to make sure you keep a record of that, and you like print that out, and you know that you properly have been admitted. And what D/S means, that you're an F1 or J1 for the duration of your stay and the duration of your status. So as long as you're doing everything we've discussed and you're maintaining that status, you want to make sure that you can thank you that you are that's up, always is correct when you come into the US. So it's something that you only get when you come in. And in the chat, there is the website. So if you haven't gone there already, I definitely suggest to go there, and you'll be able to just have your passport handy, and you'll be able to look up your own record, and you can also see your travel history as well. And I'm guessing that, to name it, I'm guessing you're looking for the website. I'm not sure if that's specific to what's being asked. Any other questions?
I am sure that students may think of other questions at a later time. And so if you run into other questions or run into other issues that you need help from your ISSS advisors later on, please remember to first check your IPEN. Again, as Donna suggested, to reach out to your assigned advisor. And also utilize our virtual drop-ins advising as well. I guess that will be the end for this presentation. Thank you so much, Donna, and thank you so much for the students who come in today for this presentation.